used to be dangerous. I do not mean violent, I do not mean cruel. I mean you used to walk into a room and people had to account for you. You had edges, you had teeth. You had the kind of anger that made people choose their words carefully before they spoke to you, and the kind of selfishness that meant your time, your energy, and your dignity were not available at a discount for anyone who asked politely. You were not easy, you were not smooth, you were not pleasant to manage. And because you were not easy to manage, you could not be managed. That was the problem. Not your problem, theirs. And then you read a book. And the book told you that your anger was toxic, and another book told you that your selfishness was a wound. And another book told you that your walls were a prison you built around yourself, and that vulnerability was the key, and trust was the foundation, and emotional regulation was the discipline of a real man who has done the work. And you believed it. Not because it was true, because it came in the right packaging, soft cover, author with a doctorate, a foreword by someone you have heard of, blurbs on the back from people who all use the word transformative in a way that should be prosecutable. And you began the project, the renovation. You started tearing out the load-bearing walls of your own personality and calling the demolition growth. I need to tell you about something Machiavelli saw, not the cartoon villain version of Machiavelli, the real one. The man who spent 50 years watching powerful men destroy themselves and had the clinical detachment to write down exactly how they did it. He noticed something that should have become a law of physics. The most virtuous prince in any territory, the one who had improved himself the most, disciplined himself the most, sanded his edges the smoothest, was always the first to lose his kingdom. Always. Not sometimes, not usually. Always. And the man who took it from him was never the more virtuous. I am going to tell you why, but not yet, because you are not ready for the reason. You are still standing in the gutted house of your own personality, believing the renovation was your idea. It was not. And the reason it was not will change how you see every book on your shelf. Here is the lie. Hear it with your skeleton. The self-improvement industry does not fix broken people. It breaks functional people and sells them the manual for their own disassembly. That sentence is the entire architecture of what I am going to show you. And if you understand nothing else from this video, understand this. A man who believes he is fine does not buy self-help books. A man who trusts his own anger does not pay someone to teach him to regulate it. A man who is comfortable behind his own walls does not attend a workshop on vulnerability. The industry needs you deficient. Your wholeness is their bankruptcy. And the founding move, the move that makes the entire enterprise possible, is the diagnosis. You are broken. You are too angry, too selfish, too guarded, too suspicious, too closed off, too much. And that diagnosis is not medicine. It is a customer acquisition strategy wearing a lab coat. Screenshot this. The self-improvement industry does not sell growth. It sells you the disease first and the cure second. And the man who buys both without asking who profits from his sickness is a man who will fund his own demolition and call it therapy. Pattern interrupt. I want you to picture a lion, not a metaphor of a lion, an actual lion with functional teeth and a territorial aggression that means nothing enters his space without his permission. Now, imagine a team of well-meaning trainers, very credentialed, very calm. They approach the lion with soft voices and therapeutic language. Your teeth are a problem, they say. Your aggression is toxic. Your distrust of strangers is an attachment wound. Let us help. Let us file down those teeth. You will not need them once you learn to regulate. Let us medicate that aggression. Let us teach you to let people approach without growling. That is not strength. That is hypervigilance. And the lion, because the trainers are kind, because they use the word healing like it is currency, because they smell like lavender and good intentions, lets them, lies down, opens his mouth, holds still while they file, and after the program is complete, the lion is smooth, approachable, safe, and something else. Something the trainers do not put in the brochure. The lion is a dog. A large, confused, toothless dog who used to be a lion and now responds to a name someone else gave him and eats on a schedule someone else set. The trainers call this progress. Machiavelli would call it what it is, domestication. And dogs, for all their warmth and obedience, do not survive without an owner. That is not a side effect. That is the product specification. Now, let me show you what they told you to remove. Because once you see the inventory of what you threw away, you will understand that the surgery was not healing. It was a weapons buyback program. And you sold your arsenal for the price of feeling normal. They told you your anger was toxic. They said it so many times in so many books, in so many therapy sessions, that the word toxic fused with the word anger in your brain like a compound noun. Toxic anger. As if anger itself was the contaminant and not the thing that contaminated you. But here is what your anger actually was before they gave it a clinical name and a treatment plan. It was a perimeter alarm, the only part of your nervous system that detected when something was wrong and generated the energy to act on it. Your boss took credit for your work. Your anger was the correct response, not an overreaction. Your relationship ran on terms that served everyone except you. Your anger was the exit signal you were supposed to follow, not regulate into silence. The system that expected you to absorb disrespect and call it professionalism, your anger, was the immune system fighting the infection. And you beautiful, obedient, improving man, you let them convince you the immune system was the disease. They did not cure you. They performed an immunectomy. And now you sit in rooms where you are being robbed and you feel nothing. Not because the robbery stopped, because the alarm did. Surveillance moment. Think about the last time you should have been angry and were not. The last time something happened at work, in a relationship, in a room where your dignity was handled carelessly and you regulated, you breathed through it. You chose the high road. You were the bigger person. Now ask yourself the question the books never teach you to ask. Who benefited from your regulation? Was it you? Or was it the person who would have had to face consequences if your alarm system had still been operational? You did not master your anger. You decommissioned it, on their schedule, at their request, and you felt evolved about the surrender. Friedrich Nietzsche identified this mechanism 140 years before your therapist gave it a billing code. He described a moral inversion, a revaluation, in which the qualities that make a man dangerous were systematically redefined as the qualities that make a man sick. Strength became aggression, self-interest became narcissism, distrust became paranoia, emotional walls became avoidance. And the men who possessed these qualities, the ones who were hardest to control, hardest to predict, hardest to manipulate, were told they needed treatment, not because they were ill, because they were expensive. An ungovernable man is the most expensive problem any institution can have. A man who does not comply on command costs the system time, energy, and leverage. A man who can be diagnosed into compliance costs 199 pages and a book deal. Nietzsche called it the morality of the herd, and the mechanics are so elegant they should make you sick. The weak do not defeat the strong by becoming stronger. They defeat the strong by redefining strength as a disease, by convincing the strong man that the thing that makes him dangerous is the thing that makes him broken. And the strong man, because he is surrounded by the diagnosis, because every book confirms it, because every podcast repeats it, eventually believes them. He picks up the file, he kneels down, and he files down his own teeth, voluntarily, while the people who need him toothless watch with the patience of farmers who know the harvest comes after the animal stops kicking. Screenshot this. They did not defeat you. They diagnosed you, and the diagnosis was the defeat. But what they did with your anger was crude, a blunt instrument. What they did with your vulnerability, that was art. Sometime in the last 15 years, vulnerability became sacred. The currency of authenticity, the mark of a man who has done the work. Open up, share your wounds, let people see the undefended interior. Drop the armor. Show the soft center. Cry if you need to, preferably in public, ideally on camera, and if possible while another man holds space for you in a way that generates content. And you did it. You stripped. You disclosed. You shared things with people who had not earned the right to hear them, because a culture that rewards emotional exhibition told you that disclosure was courage and privacy was pathology. And you felt brave. Exposed and trembling and brave. Here is what actually happened. You compiled a targeting dossier on yourself and distributed it to everyone in the room. Every wound you shared became a map coordinate. Every fear you named became a lever someone could pull when they needed you compliant. Every insecurity you disclosed became a labeled button clearly marked, easily accessible, available to anyone who was paying attention while you were busy being authentic. You did not become more connected, you became more readable. And a readable man is the most manageable man in any room, because no one needs to guess where his cracks are. He has provided the diagram, in his own hand, in the name of growth. Surveillance moment. Think about the last relationship where you were vulnerable, where you opened the architecture and showed someone the blueprint, the fears, the wounds, the mechanisms you do not show anyone. Now think about the argument, not the good times, the argument, the one where they needed to win and you needed to be managed. Did that wound you shared become a bridge? Or did it become a blade retrieved from storage at the exact moment it would do maximum damage, thrown in a voice that knew precisely where to aim because you drew the target yourself? The self-help industry would call what you did bravery. Robert Greene would call it an unforced intelligence leak. And the difference between those two assessments is the difference between a man who controls his narrative and a man who has handed the manuscript to anyone who asks nicely and then wonders why the story never goes his way. Greene documented this with the detachment of a man who understands that sentiment is a weapon most people aim at themselves. He observed that the most powerful figures in history shared one trait: opacity. Their wounds were not public, their fears were not published, their interior architecture was not available for inspection, not because they were emotionally dead, because they understood something the vulnerability industry will never teach you. Every piece of personal information in someone else's possession is a weapon they did not authorize and you cannot recall. Once the data is out, it is out. And the person who has it will store it until the moment it is useful, which is never the moment you hoped it would be. Pattern interrupt. Imagine a general who gathers his troops the night before battle and says, "I want to be vulnerable with you. Here are my fears. Here is what keeps me awake. Here is the formation that would break our left flank. Here are the 3 supply lines we cannot afford to lose. Here is the signal that would trigger a full retreat." Did he build trust? Or did he compile a manual for his own destruction and distribute it to everyone within earshot, including the soldier in the back row who will defect by Thursday? The general feels brave, his enemies feel grateful, and the self-help industry publishes the speech and calls it leadership now. Machiavelli's observation, the one I planted a minute in and have been making you wait for. Machiavelli watched the Italian peninsula in the 15th and 16th centuries, a laboratory of power where city-states rose and fell based on the strategic intelligence of the men who led them. He documented a pattern that should be tattooed on the inside of every self-improving man's eyelids. The virtuous princes, the ones who had disciplined their appetites, moderated their ambitions, cultivated mercy, practiced fairness, regulated their impulses, kept their word, improved themselves into paragons of moral excellence, lost consistently, reliably, predictably. They lost their territories, their treasuries, their armies, and in several cases their heads. And the princes who replaced them were never more virtuous. They were less readable. They had not broadcast their moral code. They had not published their principles. They had not made themselves predictable by committing publicly to a set of behaviors that an enemy could study, like sheet music, and play like an instrument. The virtuous prince had told the world exactly what he would do in every situation, because virtue requires consistency, and consistency requires predictability, and predictability is the single most exploitable quality in any adversary. A man who has announced that he will always be fair can be exploited by anyone willing to be unfair. A man who has committed publicly to honesty can be outmaneuvered by anyone willing to lie. A man who has trained himself to always regulate his anger can be provoked without consequence. The provocation carries zero risk because the ammunition has been preemptively removed. Machiavelli did not write that virtue is bad. He wrote something more devastating. He wrote that virtue broadcast is surrender. The virtuous prince did not just file his own teeth. He published the dental records, and every predator in the territory read the announcement and adjusted their strategy accordingly. The prince who had removed his own fangs was devoured by the prince who had sharpened his. Not because virtue is weak, because virtue advertised is a press release for your enemies, listing every weapon you no longer carry. Screenshot this. Self-improvement that makes you predictable is not improvement. It is a declassified intelligence file with your name on it. Every trait you publicly removed is a weapon your opponents no longer need to account for. You did not grow. You disarmed. And then you told them you disarmed. In a social media post that used the word journey, surveillance moment, there is someone in your life, you are thinking of them right now, whose life became measurably easier because of your self-improvement. Not someone who celebrated your growth. Someone who profited from it. Someone who gets less resistance from you now, less friction, less pushback. Someone who finds you more manageable since you started working on yourself. That person did not invest in your growth. That person invested in your compliance. And the return on their investment is every argument they now win by default, because you regulated the only response that would have protected you. Now, let me show you how the machine hides itself. Because the genius of the system is not that it controls you. The genius is that it makes you believe the control was your idea, that you chose this, that you wanted to be softer, smoother, easier, less, that the demolition was a renovation, that the dog was always the objective. They gave you rituals, and rituals feel like sovereignty. Morning routines, gratitude journals, affirmations in the mirror, cold showers, meditation apps with a monthly subscription to inner peace that auto-renews in case you forget to be present, and you perform them with the discipline of a man who believes he is governing his own life. But watch what these rituals actually train when you strip the inspirational packaging. Gratitude journals train you to be satisfied with what you have, which is useful to everyone who benefits from you, not demanding more. Morning routines train you to be productive on a schedule, which is useful to every employer who needs your labor at predictable intervals. Affirmations train you to override your own perceptions with pre-written beliefs, which is useful to anyone who needs you to believe something your eyes are telling you is not true. Meditation trains you to sit with discomfort without acting on it, which is useful to every person and system that is causing the discomfort and would prefer you not respond. Screenshot this. Every self-improvement ritual stripped of the packaging is a compliance training exercise. You are teaching yourself to want less, accept more, question nothing, and call the absence of resistance peace. You are not disciplined, you are domesticated, and the difference is that one of them chose the schedule and the other one was given it. Pattern interrupt. A prison has a schedule: wake at 6, exercise at 7, work at 8, eat at 12, recreation at 5, lights out at 10. The inmate who follows the schedule reliably is called a model prisoner. He gets reduced restrictions, early release, good behavior credits. Now look at your morning routine. Wake at 5, meditate at 5:15, journal at 5:30, exercise at 6, cold shower at 6:30, protein at 7. The man who follows this schedule is called disciplined. He gets social approval, professional advancement, the admiration of other men who are also following routines they did not write for reasons they have never examined. I am not calling your routine a prison sentence. I am asking you a question the books never ask. Whose schedule is this? Who wrote it? Who profits from your consistency? And when was the last time you examined whether the man who designed your morning is the man you actually want to be, or the man someone else needs you to become? Arthur Schopenhauer understood this with a clarity the modern self-improvement world cannot tolerate and will never quote. He wrote that selfishness is not a flaw in human nature, it is the engine. The drive to preserve yourself, advance yourself, protect your interests against a world that is structurally indifferent to your survival. And the culture that teaches you to suppress your selfishness is not teaching you to be better. It is teaching you to be useful to employers who need your labor without your demands, useful to relationships that need your compliance without your conditions, useful to systems that need your energy without your resistance. The self-improvement industry does not sell growth, it sells usefulness. And the man who has been improved into maximum usefulness, maximum agreeableness, maximum compliance, maximum emotional regulation is the man who has been stripped of every quality that would allow him to serve his own interests at the expense of someone else's comfort. Surveillance moment, your workplace. You have a colleague. He has not read the books. He has not done the journaling. He has not identified his attachment style, or practiced naming his emotions, or taken a single cold shower in the name of personal growth. He is selfish. He is strategic. He advocates for himself with an enthusiasm you were taught to diagnose as a personality disorder, and he is being promoted. While you, the improved version, the regulated version, the man who absorbs criticism without reacting and takes on extra work without complaining and communicates his needs using I statements he learned from a book he bought because someone on a podcast said it changed their life. You are being managed, not advanced, managed, because the system does not reward agreeable men. The system uses agreeable men. And then it promotes the man who had the strategic selfishness to negotiate, to refuse, to hold his position, to say no with the calm authority of a man who has never apologized for wanting what he wants. His emotional intelligence is ruthlessness in a tailored sentence. Yours is compliance in a therapy voice. And the results speak for themselves. Now, I need to be honest about something, because I refuse to build the same trap I have just dismantled. Not all self-improvement is domestication. Some of it is real. Some men genuinely need to confront patterns that are destroying them, addiction that has replaced strategy with chemistry, cruelty that has replaced strength with wreckage, self-sabotage so comprehensive that the man is not exercising sovereignty, he is setting himself on fire and calling it freedom. The man who cannot control his drinking is not ungovernable. He is governed by a bottle. The man who destroys every relationship through genuine cruelty is not maintaining strategic detachment. He is wounded and mistaking the wound for a weapon. The distinction is this, and I need you to hear it with precision because this is where most people will use what I have said to justify their avoidance. Growth, you chose growth that serves your interests, that makes you more capable, more dangerous, more free, that expands what you can do rather than restricting what you are allowed to feel that is real. Growth that was prescribed, growth that someone else identified as necessary, that makes you more agreeable, more predictable, more comfortable for others to be around. That is domestication. Wearing a therapeutic mask, quoting a book you paid for, in a voice you were trained to use. The honest question is this: am I growing toward my own design or toward someone else's? Am I building the version of myself that I chose or the version that is easiest for the people around me to manage? If you have been growing on your own blueprint, everything I have said is a sharpening stone. Use it. If you have been growing on someone else's, then the version of you that existed before the renovation started was not the broken one. The version of you that existed before they convinced you your teeth were a disease, and your walls were a deficiency, and your anger was a pathology, that version was not sick. That version was expensive. Expensive to manage, expensive to control, expensive to predict, and they needed you cheaper. So they sold you a diagnosis, and you bought the treatment, and you performed the surgery on yourself, and you called the blood growth. Machiavelli would have recognized you, not the improved version, the original, the one with the teeth and the walls and the anger that worked. He would have recognized you because you were what he described as the prince who could not be moved by appeals to virtue, the one whose self-interest was so intact that no manipulation disguised as morality could reach him. That prince did not need to be cruel. He needed to be immune to the weapons that use kindness as a delivery system, and growth as a sedative, and vulnerability as a surveillance program. You were that man before the books, before the journals, before the 12-week programs and the gratitude lists and the emotional regulation courses and the breathwork retreats where you learned to sit with your rage until it stopped being useful. You were that man, and you can be him again. Not by abandoning growth, by reclaiming the authority to define what growth means on your terms, in your interests, toward your design. Not the design they sold you, not the blueprint the industry printed, yours. The books will keep coming. The podcasts will keep diagnosing you. The coaches will keep identifying the flaws they need you to have so they can sell you the fix. Let them. Their industry requires your belief that you are broken. Your freedom requires the opposite. Stop improving. Start remembering. Remember the man you were before someone profitable told you he needed repair. There is a video on this channel about the thing you were before they started the renovation, the solitude, the different wiring, the power they told you was a defect. If you prefer being alone, you likely possess these 6 rare powers. That video is the architecture. This video was the demolition notice for the renovation you never authorized. Watch it next. Because the man who remembers what he was before they started fixing him is the man who finally understands what they were trying to remove. And it was not the damage. It was the teeth. This is your cold awakening.